This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Glatstein, for that very generous introduction. I want to thank Rabbi Glatstein for organizing this Shiur and many Shiurim over the last couple of months. And I want to be mevarich him and his mishpacha and the schus of his tzedakah Torah. Ron Shem to be machzik him and his mishpacha for simchas nachas for his toivos and bias be'el tzedek. I want to thank my good friend Rabbi Subar at the camera. And if anybody wants to get the Marakaimos for any of the Shiurim, please contact Rabbi Aaron. He'll be very happy to email them at office@rabbidg.com.
Yeah, I'll just go to the website.
Go to the website. Okay. Okay, welcome everyone. We have a very interesting subject today that's relevant to this time of the year and to Chanukah in particular. There's a very interesting comment in the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai says that on Shabbos Chanukah you should eat more than other Shabbos. You should be marbe in the Suda of Shabbos Chanukah than any other Shabbos. Certainly if Shabbos is Rosh Chodesh. And says Ben Ish Chai, you should be marbe in the Sudas of Rosh Chodesh Teves. And our minhag is, says the Ben Ish Chai, that on Rosh Chodesh Teves we light a ner Le'iloi Nishmas Rabbi Meir Balanes. Okay, very nice. Why do we light a ner Le'iloi Nishmas Rabbi Meir Balanes on Rosh Chodesh Teves? And by the way, this is brought lahalacha in the Kaf HaChaim. So you say, well, you know, this is an Ashkenazic audience, so we're already talking about lighting candles. But that's what the Ben Ish Chai writes, and the Kaf HaChaim codifies it. Moreover, Reb Chaim Falaji, Reb Nosson quoted Reb Chaim Falaji, he mentions from his son, who wrote a sefer, which I believe was originally written in Ladino. Ladino is basically Yiddish for people from Spain, you know? So, I remember when I was in yeshiva, in elementary school, they used to teach psukim into Yiddish. So, I remember the first Rashi I ever learned, Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. Malachim mamish, mamish malachim. But the problem was, I didn't know what malachim were, and I didn't know what mamish was. It took me about 6 years to figure out what Rashi was saying. But Ladino is basically Yiddish for, so the Sefer Vayan Avram was written in Ladino. Reb Chaim Falaji, his father, says that my son writes that on Chanukah, one should be menadev tzedakah le'iloi nishmas Rabbi Meir Balanes, and especially Rosh Chodesh Teves, one should be menadev tzedakah le'iloi nishmas Rabbi Meir Balanes, send the money to Tzedakah. Okay. What's Rabbi Meir Balanes got to do with Chanukah? What does it have to do with Rosh Chodesh Teves particularly? No information is given, not in the Ben Ish Chai, not in the Kaf HaChaim, and not in the Moyed B'chol Chai of Reb Chaim Falaji. So let's go to a question you probably, a question you probably never heard this question before. You know, they come into the Heichal, and they're looking for oil, they're looking, and lo and behold, they found enough oil to last for 1 day, and it lasted for 8 days. So I'm going to tell you a kasha you probably never heard before in your life. Why is Chanukah 8 days? If the miracle only occurred for 7 days, Chanukah should be 7 days. So at least I came here, I told you something, a chiddush. By the way, you know, the Beis Yosef asked that question, but the chiddush is, it's not the kasha. The Beis Yosef, the Rishonim already asked this question. The Sefer HaEshkol, the Sefer HaItim, the Orches Chaim of Rabbi Aaron of Lunil also asked this question, why is Chanukah 8 days? It should be 7 days. But we're going to ask a new question. Maybe you never heard this question before. And that is the question of the Mordechai and the question of the Avudraham. They want to know, why do we not have 9 days of Chanukah? After all, we know that every Yom Tov has Sveika the Yom. Pesach is 8 days. Sukkot is 9 days. Shavuos is 2 days. We should have 9 days of Chanukah al Sveika the Yom. So you're thinking, what do you mean Chanukah is a D'Rabbanan? We don't have Sveika the Yom on D'Rabbanans. Not so fast. Because the Mordechai asks, we should have Sveika the Yom on Purim. And the Mordechai answers, the only reason we don't have Sveika the Yom on Purim is because it says V'lo Yavor, you're not going to go beyond Tesvav. But by Chanukah, it doesn't say V'lo Yavor. We should have Sveika the Yom, we should have 9 days of Chanukah. So I always thought that this is nothing to do with the Shiur, that the two questions answer each other. Really, there's 7 days of Chanukah, like Beis Yosef is right, and the 8th day is Sveika L'Yoma. Nobody gives that answer. Okay. So that's the question. Why don't we have Sveika L'Yoma on Chanukah? So there's a great Tana by the name of Rabbi Meir. As you know, I have a special affinity with the Tana of Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Meir had a father-in-law. His name was Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion. Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion. Yeah, he's in this week's Parsha. Parsha's Vayishlach. Why? Because it says when Shechem tells his father, I want Choshka Nafshi Bedina, so Shechem has to persuade the residents of the city to allow the Bnei Yaakov to come in. He says, V'hinei Rachavas Yodayim. It's a very expansive land. The Rachaim HaKadosh says, Rachavas is Rosh Tevos Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion. Somehow the soul of Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion was trapped in Shechem, and I like to suggest that we know in the beginning of the Parsha, Yaakov Avinu was afraid Shema Yaroi Achirim, and Achirim, of course, the Balei Dorshe Rishumai says refers to Rabbi Meir. So Yaakov Avinu wanted to make sure that if he doesn't kill Esav, to make sure that Rabbi Meir is still around. But it's not enough to have Rabbi Meir because we need Rabbi Meir's wife Bruria because she taught him a few things as well. So after Yaakov Avinu ensures that Rabbi Meir sticks around, he goes to Shechem and he rescues the Shver of Rabbi Meir, namely Rabbi Chanani ben Tradion, but that's a discussion for a different time. But the Gemara says Rabbi Chanani ben Tradion had another daughter, and because he taught Torah Barabim, she was taken, and there was a gzeira on her that she was taken to a base Zionos, to a brothel. And he was distraught, and her sister was distraught, so she goes to Rabbi Meir and she says, Rabbi Meir, do me a favor, rescue my sister. So Rabbi Meir says, this is not exactly a place that I want to be found, in the base Zionos. She says, you gotta save her. So he goes into the base Zionos, he tells the shomer, listen up, I need to rescue my sister-in-law. He said, no, who's your sister-in-law? He says, that one. So first he wanted to see whether she's still tahar, whether she's still tzaddikus. So he made an attempt, and she pushed him off. She said, I'm tamei, not now, they're better ones. And he realized that she remained tahar. And the warden says, what do you want to do with her? He said, I want to take her out. He said, the warden said, they're going to kill me. So Rebbe said, I'm not going to do anything to you. Here, take the following tefillah. The tefillah is, Elokah, Demeir, Ani. The Shomer says, yeah, what's that going to do? So Meir says, watch. He takes a clod of earth, he throws it at a kelev. Kelev is the Gematria 52. By the way, the Yevonim, the Rambam writes in the Yahrtzeit ruled over Yisrael for 52 years, the Gematria Kelev. The Yevonim are rooted in the force of Tumah of Kelev, which is prevalent primarily in Chodesh Teves, by the way. That's why the Munkasha writes, almost always, the Gezeiros of the Goyim are decreed on the Jewish people in the month of Teves. Historically, they always happen in the month of Teves. And that is why Yom Edom, the birth of their Mamzer, is this particular month, because they're rooted in the Kayach of the Kelev. Okay, and hang on to that, we'll see if we come back to that. Be it as it may, Rabbi Meir has a particular Kayach to overcome Kelev, dogs. So he takes a cloud of earth, he throws it at the Kelev, and the Kelev starts attacking, and they say, Elokah Demeir Anini, and the Kelev drops dead. So the Shomer was impressed, and the Shomer said, fine, very good, here's your daughter, here's your sister-in-law, and Rabbi Meir takes his sister-in-law, and the Gemara says that Rabbi Meir became a wanted man. They put up a poster of him on the gates of Rome. Rabbi Meir is a wanted man. By the way, throughout Shas, Rabbi Meir is always busy with dogs. For example, in the Mishnah Brachas, Avtes on the base. When is the Zman Kriya Shema Shel Shachris? So we say, when you can tell the difference between blue wool and white wool, blue wool and green wool, whatever it is. And Rabbi Meir says, no, when you can tell the difference between a Kelev and a Ze'ev. And Rabbi Kiva says, no, when you can tell the difference between a Chamor and an Aroy. So the Smichas Chachamim says, they're all the same exact opinion. But they were saying what they were familiar with. Rabbi Kiva was familiar with a chamor. By the way, Rav Shamshi Shapoli writes in this week's Parsha Rabbi Akiva was a nitzos of Chamar, Shchem ben Chamar. That's why Rabbi Akiva said, "Miyeneni Tamar Chacham Ashchenu Chamar." But so Rabbi Akiva is always busy with the Chamar, and Rabbi Meir is busy with the Kelev. So Rabbi Meir was an expert in dogs. Why? Somehow this month, the month of Teves, the month when the forces of evil are rooted in the Kelev, the Yavon, in 52 years, Rabbi Meir has a particular kayach. So let's begin with the following question. Ask the Marsha. Rabbi Meir would say, Elokah Demeir Anini. Frank the Marsha, how could you say Elokah Demeir Anini? We have a principle that the Rebbe Shalom does not designate his name on Tzadikim B'chayim. The Rebbe Shalom does not associate his name with the righteous while they're still alive, because you never know. A person could be a tzaddik for a decade, for 2 decades, for 80 years, and they can veer off in the end. So Rebbe Shalom doesn't take any chances. He will not say Elokei anybody, not Elokei Yeshaya, Elokei Yirmiyah, Elokei Yecheskel. That's why the Rebbe Shalom said Pachad Yitzchak, I Elokei Avram. Okay, there's answers to that. Maybe Avram is not an individual, he's Klal Yisrael. Okay. So how could Rabbi Meir say, Elokah de Meir? Rabbi Meir is still alive, Rebbe Shalom does not associate his name with Tzaddik and B'chayim. By the way, who's the example of somebody who after 80 years veered off? Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Yochanan Bimei Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. The author of Al-Anisim. You know who authored Al-Anisim? Yochanan himself authored Al-Anisim. You know how many words are in Al-Anisim? Either 124 words or 125 words. It's Machlekes the Kolba and the Rekeach. Yochanan is Gematria 124. So either he wrote a tefillah corresponding to the number of the Gematria of his name, or B'nei Ad Sanusa, because of his humility, he wrote 125 words with one more word than the Gematria of his name. And here Rabbi Yochanan himself, the Tana, the Kohen Gadol, he went off. Which is very difficult to understand in Chlal, because then why do we still say his tefillah? Usually the rule is, if somebody goes off, we take their stuff and we put it under the rug. The Gra, in the Imrei Nayam, on Bracha, says there were 2 Yochanan Kohen Gadols. But according to most, it was the exact same Yochanan Kohen Gadol. So the Kloisenberger Rebbe has a tshuva that somehow Yochanan had a tikkun through the miracle of Chanukah, and it's Merumas in a Mishnah in Shabbos. Rabbi Huda Omer, the Ner Chanukah Pater. Right? Do you remember the Mishnah? The Mishnah says, Imi achen v'ni neira yibachutz. Right? Because what's the machlokes between the tzaddikim and the prushim? Do you make the fire outside and then make the ktaras, or do you bring the ktaras inside and then light a fire? So Rabbi Yochanan, Hiniach chen v'ni neira mibachutz chayiv. Chen v'ni is oisi Yochanan. That was the opinion of the tzaddikim. Rabbi Huda Omer, v'ner Chanukah Pater, somehow through the miracle of Chanukah, Yochanan Kohen Gadol had his tikkun. But here's the question. The question is, how could Rabbi Meir offer this tefillah? Elokah de Meir Anini, but the Rebbe does not associate his name with tzadikim b'chayim. Another interesting question. Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham says, although we're familiar that many Yom Tovim are associated with the mitzvah of tzedakah. So you have on Purim, you have Matan Savyonim, on Pesach, you have Mois Chitim. The Magen Avraham brings the minhag of the Na'arim is to go around and to collect house to house on Chanukah. Where does this come from? The Magen Avraham quotes Chanukah Sabayis. Who's the Chanukah Sabayis? Chanukah Sabayis was written by a Kadmoin, Rabbi Shaul, from the times of Marsha. By the way, interestingly, the Sefer Chanukah Sabayis is a Sefer entirely written on the Perush, a Perush on the Pismoin Hanerei Salom. Where do you get it? I don't know, I once went to a random Sarasar in Williamsburg, and for one of the Skver Rebbe's Chasinas, they published the Chanukah Sabayis. I think that's the only time I ever saw it. So there's a Sefer Chanukah Sabayis, And the whole sefer is that the Haneros Halalu should have either 36 words or 44 words. 36 Keneged, the 36 Neros of Chanukah, or 44 Keneged, the 44 Neros of Chanukah. Okay, I'm going to tell you something that has nothing to do with anything, but this Chanukah is coming up. But a remez to Chanukah in this week's Parsha. Okay, it's an original remez. It's in Yosef's dreams. I'm going to say it very quickly. A remez to Chanukah in Yosef's dreams. So Yosef, this is has two dreams, right? He dreams about all the bundles bowing down to him, right? So Yosef dreams about the bundles, and then Yosef dreams about the sun, the moon, the stars are all bowing down to him. However, if you look in the Pesukim, after Yosef told his brothers the first dream, it says, "Vayosifu oid sinai oisai al chaloi moisai." They hated him about his dreams. The question is, he only had one dream. You ever have this kasha? Yosef says over one dream, and it says they hated him about his dreams. He only said one dream. So the Bar Tanura writes that there is a third dream in the Parsha that's not described and not discussed, but it's understood. What's the third dream? Third dream, you have to know what it says in Parsha Zayechi. Parsha Zayechi, after the P'tir of Yaakov Avinu, so the brothers are getting nervous. Yosef's going to take revenge. So Yosef tries to calm his brother down. And Yosef says to the brothers, what are you worried about? Yosef consoled the brothers. He spoke to their heart. Says the Gemara Megillah, what did Yosef tell the brothers? Says the Gemara Megillah, Yosef told the brothers, if 10 candles can't put out one candle, then how should one candle put out 10 candles? That's the Gemara Megillah. Yosef told the brothers, if 10, meaning when you guys had me in the pit and you couldn't extinguish me, the 10 of you couldn't put me out, then the one candle, I can't put you out. Where did Yosef get the analogy of candles from? Asked the Bar Tanura. Why didn't Yosef say if 10 clubs couldn't hit one, then one can hit that? If 10 fish couldn't swallow one little one out, where did Yosef get the analogy of candles? Says the Bar Tanura, that was the first dream of Yosef. Yosef had a dream that 10 candles could not put out one candle. So why doesn't the Torah record it? It says about the Torah doesn't record in this week's Parsha because it didn't really bother the brothers. Because all Yosef was telling him then was, don't worry, you could never destroy me, you could never harm me. So the first dream of Yosef is, he has no illusions of grandeur, he's not dreaming of being the Melech, he's just saying, you guys will never harm me. Yeah? So it's not recorded because it didn't bother the brothers. So the first dream of Yosef was what? 10 candles can't put out one candle. So let's make a cheshbon. Yosef has a dream. How many candles does he see in the dream? How many mirrors does he see in the dream? 11. Yeah? And then he goes and he tells the brothers about how many candles? 11 candles. We're up to 20. And then in Vayechi he says, if 10 can't put out one, another 11, then how could one put out 10? These are the 44 nearest of Chanukah and the dreams of Yosef. 22 in this week's Parsha, 22 in Parsha Zayechi. Now, one more little detail. When does Yosef tell the brothers that if 10 can't put out one can't put out 10? After the Avilas of Yaakov was completed. Now, how long was the Avilas of Yaakov? 30 days, and then 40 days. When was Yaakov buried? When did Yaakov pass away? So Seder Olam says he was niftar on first day of Sukkot. That means his kavura was 70 days later. When? On Chanukah. So on Chanukah, Yosef tells the brothers, 10 can't put out one. How are one supposed to put out 10? So the remez to Chanukah in the dreams of Yosef happened on Chanukah. But be it as it may. So we're back to the Magen. The Magen shows us Middan Chanukah to give out tzedakah. In fact, in the Sefer Chanukah's Habayis, he says, if you use the trick called Atbash, and you take the word Chanukah, so the Ches becomes the letter Samach, and if you Atbash the letters of Chanukah, you get 269 Gematria Soid Tzedakah, the essence of Tzedakah. So take the word Chanukah, Atbash it, you get 269, the essence of Tzedakah. What is Chanukah? Chanukah is nothing less than the essence of Tzedakah. First of all, what would Chanukah have to do with Tzedakah in the first place? Let alone, why would Chanukah be the very essence of Tzedakah? So we come to the Al Hanisim, and there's a very important and interesting comment. Al Hanisim begins, Kisha'amda Malchus Yov and Harasha Al Amcha Yisrael. The Yevanim came and they attacked the Jewish nation. And then the Rishon saved us, Ula'amcha Yisrael Asisa Tshua Gedola. And to the nation of Israel, you made a great salvation. And then at the end of Al Hanisim, V'yachar Kein Bo'u Banecha. So what happened? We got a name change. In the beginning of Al Hanisim, we're Amcha. In the middle of Al Hanisim, we're Amcha. In the end of Al Hanisim, we're Banim. What happened in the Al Hanisim? Another important question. If I were to ask you, what was the primary gezerah of the Yevanim? What did they decree on Klal Yisrael? So you look through Shas Babli, and what does Shas Babli tell us about the decree of the Yevanim? Shas Babli says nothing. There's not one word. We have known nothing. It doesn't say. They didn't do anything. What? Shabbos? Oh, Shabbos Milan Chodesh. Very nice. Where does it say? Everybody knows. But like Katuv, not the Babli, not Yishalmi, and not in anywhere other than Megillas Tainis. In Megillas Tainis it says, which by the way is very early, Megillas Tainis is the earliest Parsha about that. Megillas Tainis says that they were goyzer on Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. However, if you look in the Medrash says they had this very interesting gezerah. The Medrash says that there's a remez to the Daled Golios in the beginning of the Torah. Soyu, Avoyu, Choshech, Apnei Soyu is Babel, Vayu is Madai, Choshech is Yavan. Shehechshichu Eineihem Shal Yisrael B'Gzeirosem. They darkened our eyes with their decrees. V'Oimrim Lahem Kisvu Al Karanashai. Right on the horn of an ox. She'ein Lachem Chelek Elokei Yisrael. That you have no share in the Rebbe Shalom. Interesting. In the Medrash, all we find is they made us right on the horn of an ox. We have no chelek in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In Megillas Tainis, we find that they made a decree that we can't observe Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. So, which one was it? Did we have to ride on the horn of an ox? That we have no share in the Rebbe Shalom? Or did we have to give up the observance of Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos? How do you reconcile? Why does the Medrash say 3, and why does Megillas Tainis say 3, and the Medrash says 1? How do these gezeros work together? So there's a great man by the name of Yosef HaTzadik, and he comes to Paroi, and he says, Yaseh Paroi, v'yavke pekidim al ha'aretz, v'chimesh esaretz Mitzrayim. Literally, Yosef tells Paroi, I want you to prepare, I want you to arm the land of Egypt. They have to be ready for the upcoming years of famine. However, the Chidah brings down from the Darshei Rishumos that Yosef was preparing Mitzrayim for the ultimate descent of the Jewish people of Egypt, and Yosef was Masakin, and he advised Paroi to be Masakin that Klal Yisrael and Mitzrayim need to be able to observe the following: V'chimesh, Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. These 3 mitzvahs even preceded the giving of the Torah. Yosef was Masakin in Mitzrayim. He told Paroi, V'chimesh, Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. Why? Why was Yosef Masakin, Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos? Says the Holy Chidah. Says the Chidah, Yosef knew that we have a problem. Yeah, Houston, we have a problem. And the problem is that Bnei Yisrael need to be in Mitzrayim 430 years. But if we're going to be in Mitzrayim for 430 years, we will disappear so fast after 87 years, after 210 years, that we would assimilate, we would disintegrate, and we would cease to be a nation. So Yosef had to come up with a plan that the Rebbe is going to take us out early. Now, how can he take us out early? We have to be there 430 years. The only way he would take us out early is if the Rebbe would reckon the intensity of the Shiur and consider the fact that we work so intensely as if we worked overtime. Now, says the Judah, if there's a decree on somebody that they have to work a certain amount of time, whatever it is, and they work harder, they're not leaving earlier. I mean, that's just how it is. If there is a decree on someone, you need to spend X amount of time somewhere, then you got to be there. The only person that it makes a difference to, the only person who's going to take into the cheshbon the intensity of the servitude, is if the person doing the serving is a child, is a ben, is the son of the person who made the decree. Says the Chidah, Yosef understood. The only way the Jewish people are leaving Egypt early is if Hashem will consider us as beloved children, and then say, okay, I know you need to be there 430 years, but I will reckon the intensity of the labor as if you did the time. We know that even though we were supposed to be in Mitzrayim 430 years, the actual time of intense shibud was only 86 years. 1/5 of the amount of time we were supposed to serve. That's what Yosef is saying. V'chimesh, we need to get out after 1/5 of the time. How are we going to get out after 1/5 of the time? If we establish 3 mitzvahs that are koiveya, that Klal Yisrael are indeed the beloved children of Hashem. Which mitzvahs, of all the mitzvahs in the Torah, demonstrate that we are banim hamakom, chodesh, milah, and Shabbos? Says the Chidah. We'll start with chodesh. Here you have a bezdin, and they don't know what they're doing. They don't really know the halacha. And they proclaim Rosh Chodesh was yesterday, and even though Rosh Chodesh is supposed to be tomorrow. So when do you observe Yom Kippur? You follow the bezdin. What happens if you don't follow the bezdin? You're going to be punished in the Hashemayim. What happens if you follow the bezdin who don't know what they're talking about? You're going to get schar meruba she'ein kol malach u'garia yechel l'shayim. But the bezdin, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know the sugya. Doesn't matter. What if the bezdin intentionally decided to distort the halacha? You have to follow the bezdin. What happens if you don't follow the bezdin? You could be chayiv skila. What happens if you follow the bezdin? You're going to get a reward in l'shayim. Wait a second. Why is Rebbe allowing himself to be handcuffed by a bezdin that is unlearned and wicked? They bemazed are trying to distort the Jewish calendar. The answer is it's exeres hakasam. Atem afilu shoygigim, atem afilu mazidim, atem afilu mutayim. It doesn't matter if they're unintentional, intentional, mistaken. You gotta follow the bezdin. So why is Rebbe handcuffing himself to the bezdin? Says the Chidah, that's because the din of Rosh Chodesh demonstrates that Rebbe loves the Jewish people so much that he treats us like his beloved children, and he says, I am subject to whatever you say. Milah also, the Chidah brings. Milah, the Zohar says, someone who is shomer. The Milah demonstrates he's a ben HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And of course, Shabbos. We know, Goy Sheshabas Chayev Hisa. A Goy that rests on the 7th day is liable to the death penalty. Why? Because the Ribono Shalom rested on Shabbos. So Shabbos is the scepter of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbos is Hashem's prized possession. Who dares to pick up the scepter of the king? Someone who picks up the scepter of the king is a Moirid B'Malchus. There's only one individual who's authorized to pick up the scepter of the king, that's the king's child. So Shabbos demonstrates we're banim hamakom. So these 3 mitzvahs, Yosef tells Paro, we need to establish them in Mitzrayim. Because if we establish them in Mitzrayim, then Klal Yisrael will have a din of banim. And if we have a din of banim, we can get out early. By the way, the Chidah says that there's another thing we need to have a din banim for. Because the Gemara has a very interesting question. The Gemara asks, When Hashem buried Moshe and was metameh himself to Moshe, what mikvah did he go into? Yeah? That was the kasha of the Gemara. Nowadays, they had pretty big mikvahs, but back then, there's a kasha. What mikvah to the Rebbe Shalom? So Tosfos asks, what mikvah did he go to? Why don't you ask how the Rebbe Shalom was allowed to be metameh to Moshe? The Rebbe Shalom is a kohen, and a kohen cannot be metameh. Tosfos says it's not a problem. We're banim l'amapen. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though he's a kohen, he can be metameh to his shiva kohen. Rebbe Shalom's a kohen gadol? No, he's not. Mipnei Andusanusa, he doesn't want to be kohen gadol. Says the Chida, Bakasha. Klal Yisrael is in Mitzrayim, is a makom tumah. Rebbe Shalom's a kohen. How could he come and take us out? He's making himself tameh. Rebbe Shalom can't make himself tameh. Tosfos is kasha. A kohen can't be metameh. Says the Chida, that's why Yosef was masaking Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos, so that we would have a din banim, so that even though the Rebbe Shalom's a kohen, he could be metameh to us and be kohen. That's the Chida. Says the Chida, in the times of the Yevanim were very smart people. They appreciated chachma, they appreciated knowledge, they appreciated intellect. What the Yevanim could not stand, they couldn't take the fact that Klal Yisrael thought that we were more elite, we were closer to the Yevanim than anybody else. They didn't like the fact that we said, we are the children of Hashem. Right? You ever hear they say, after all, we're all the children of the Lord. Right? It's a bunch of rubbish. It's not true. We're not all the children of the Lord. The Mishnah says, Banim atem Hashem lekechem. You, Klal Yisrael, you're the children of Hashem. So the Yevanim said, how can we make Klal Yisrael feel that they don't have a special kesher to Hashem, that they don't have a special relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? If we're able to be mavatel the mitzvahs of Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos, which are the mitzvahs that demonstrate we are Banim Hashem, then Klal Yisrael will know the truth. They'll recognize that if they don't have these three mitzvahs, they'll know Ein Lanu Chelek Be'Elokei Yisrael. Says the Chida, it's three mitzvahs that demonstrate that we have a chelek in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We could explain even further. So Rabbi Glatstein and I were in Hebron about a year ago. We were at the Kever of the Chesed L'Avram. Chesed L'Avram was the great-grandfather of the Chida. And the Chesed L'Avram wonders, what does it mean that Klal Yisrael are the children of Hashem? What's that supposed to mean? I like to say over it. So you're in the store, which is your first mistake. And the bigger mistake is you brought your kids with you. And they're acting up, especially if it's a clothing store, and they're running, into the clothing under the racks. And so, who are these kids? I don't know. I found them on my doorstep one day, and I had Rachmanis on them, and I took them in. When they behave, of course, we like to say they're our children. When they don't behave, we're watching them. But it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Your kid is your kid is your kid is your kid. Rabbi Yehuda holds not so. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that in terms of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if we behave, we are God's children. If we don't behave, we are not related. The Rebbe Shalom is babysitting for us. He found us somewhere. That would be a convenient relationship with our children, but we don't have that luxury. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Rebbe Shalom has the luxury of saying that if we're not behaving, he doesn't know who we are. He hired us and we're not doing the job. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir holds no. Rabbi Meir is the opinion, Kedushin Lamed Vav, Ben Kach U Ben Kach, Nekron Banim. No matter what we do, we are always the children of Hashem. And as we know, Rabbi Meir cites 4 psukim to uphold his shita. Banim Sechalim, Banim Mashchisim, Banim Loi Emun Ba, Ba B'nei Kel Chayim. Meaning, the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir is of the opinion, whether we're foolish, whether we don't believe in Hashem, whether we're mushchasim, we're always called Zisa, Taira, Kendubach. It's a Gemara. Now, let's try to understand that. Because we understand that if we have a child, it's our child. The father and mother contribute to the genetic code of the child. They gave the child his DNA. The child is literally a piece of the parent. The father gives the lavan, the mother gives the oidem. The child is from the essential makeup of the parent. What would it mean that a Jew is a child of Hashem? Are we all the creations of Hashem? How is a Jew more the child of Hashem than anybody else? So the Chesed Avram writes, this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ki chelek Hashem Amai. The same way your child has your physical DNA, the Rebbeinu Shalom has given the Jewish people the spiritual code of their neshama. The Jewish neshama is qualitatively of different essential makeup than the neshama of any other being. So while we respect all mankind, and chaviv adam shenivra b'tzelem, but chaviv in Yisrael shemikru banim lamakom, we have a different neshama. Our neshama is chelek Hashem. Chelek Hashem means we are banim lamakom. So it's so beautiful. When the Yevanim wanted to be Mavatel, Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos, they said these are the details. But the generality is, I want you to recognize, Ein lachem chelek be'elokei Yisrael. You are not more a piece of the divine than we are. That's how the two Gzeros sing together. It's even more beautiful in light of the fact that the Maharal writes, Rashi writes on the Medrash, that Kisvu al Keren Hashar, right on the horn of an ox. What does the ox have to do with it? So the Chidah says, who's the ox? Who's the shar? Yosef. Because Yosef tried to establish you are banim, the Chimesh Eretz Mitzrayim, so we're going to counteract Yosef the ox. You're going to ride on the horn of the ox. So Yosef doesn't know what he's saying. But according to the Maharal, according to Rashi, the shar refers to the Chedorah, that the Yevanim wanted to drum up the sin of the golden calf. Amazingly, the Medrash tells us, and the Medrash could be found in number 24 and number 25 of the sheets that say Rabbi Meir Chanukah on it. The Medrash says, if you want to know what Madrega Klal Yisrael lost at the Cheva Egel, the Medrash says Klal Yisrael lost the Madrega of Ki Chelek Hashem Amai. That in fact at the Cheva Egel we were no longer reckoned Ki Chelek Hashem Amai. So the Yevanim said, look, you're not essentially the children of Hashem. Look at this event in history. There was a moment in history where you lost the Madrega of Ki Chelek Hashem Amai. You're not Banim Lamakom. So which three mitzvahs were in jeopardy in the times of the Yevanim? For, by the way, 52 years, Gematria Kelev, Chodesh, Mila, Shabbos. The Yevanim wanted us to feel we are not Banim Lamakom. Says Rabbi Aaron of Loniel, one of the great Rishonim. Really, Chanukah should be 7 days. But the celebration of Chanukah is the celebration of the restoration of Chodesh, which we automatically have in Chanukah. There's always Rosh Chodesh Tevis in Chanukah. Shabbos, there's always Shabbos Chanukah. But we need an 8th day of Chanukah, Keneged Bris Milah, because the whole purpose of the Yom Tov of Chanukah is to restore the mitzvahs of Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos. So Chodesh we would have in 7 days. Shabbos we would have in 7 days, and the 8th day is for Milah, says the Chidah. That's why we can't have Sefer Yom on Chanukah. Because if we have Sefer Yom, we lost Milah, and then the Yevanim won. So we have 8 days of Chanukah, but Dafko we can't, it's as if it would say V'lo Yavar on Chanukah, because you can't go beyond 8. That's the thing. So the Rebbe Shalom made us a great miracle on Chanukah. Who do you think was really basking in the light of Chanukah? After all, the Rebbe Shalom is restoring Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos. The Rebbe Shalom is restoring the inyan that we are Banim Lamakom. So who do you think is a beaming, watching the miracle of Chanukah? The Yom Tov of Chanukah is like the whole essence of who? Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is in love with the Yom Tov of Chanukah. Rabbi Meir says this is what I'm talking about. Even though Klal Yisrael were nisrashel ba'avodah, and they were assimilated, the Rebbe says it doesn't matter, you're still my beloved kinderlach. Rabbi Meir loves the miracle of Chanukah. Says B'nai Yisasvar, so when Yahrtzeit and Kohen Gadol formulated Al Anisim, he says, yes, Kisha'amda Malchus Yavan Al Amcha Yisrael, Uli Amcha Yisrael Asisa B'Shul Gadol Forkan Kayam Azeh. But Yochanan Kohen Gadol is madgish at the end of the Al Anisim, Yachar Kain Bo'u Banecha, because the Yom Tov of Chanukah, the miracle of Chanukah, was the Rebbe Shem restored to us and demonstrated to the entire world. He was Mefarsei Milsa, that no matter what, Shitas Rabbi Meir Beikach Beikach Mikron Banim. Says the Avudraham, don't make the mistake that many make and they omit the line V'achar Kach Ba'u Banecha. Says the Avudraham, it's actually on your other set of booklets, all the way in the end, in number 25. Last Maramakoim, V'hamoin ha'am einam oimrim v'yachar kach bo banecha v'nachai la'omroi ki hu ikar hanes. The main miracle of Chanukah is v'yachar kach bo banecha, that the Rebbe Shem restored our status of banim. Don't say Al Anisim and miss the boat. Rebbe Shem restored Chodesh Milan Shabbos, and he demonstrated Yesh lachem chelek Elokei Yisrael. You are banim la'makayim. Says the Parsha, the tefillah of Alakad Meir Aneni has nothing to do with Rabbi Meir. What Rabbi Meir meant when he said Alakad Meir Aneni was whenever he would be in a tzara, whenever he was worried about something, whenever there was a difficulty, he said, Elokah Meir Lanu B'Nes Shel Chanukah Hu Ya'ir Lanu. Rabbi Meir, whenever he was in a bind, he taught Klal Yisrael, say as follows. The same way the Rebbe Shalom saved us in the time of Chanukah, bail us out of this. You got a parking ticket, you can't find your socks, you don't know where your toothbrush is, you don't know where your car keys are. Elokah Meir Aneni. What does that mean? Rebbe Shalom, you saved us in the times of Chanukah, save us now. Why is Rabbi Meir always busy with Chanukah? What's he so busy with Chanukah? Why didn't he say, Elokah, Dohitziyanu mi Mitzrayim, help me find my car keys. Elokah, that gave us the Torah. Why is Rabbi Meir always invoking the miracle of Chanukah? What does Rabbi Meir have to do with Chanukah? The light of Chanukah is the light that no matter what madriga we're on, we are always the beloved children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is no one who loves Chanukah more than Rabbi Meir. There's no Yom Tov that expresses the worldview of Rabbi Meir more than the Yom Tov of Chanukah. So Rabbi Meir would say, you showed us, Ribono Shel Olam, my Shita, that Beikach Nikra Baruch Tav Chanukah, help me out with X, Y, and Z. So he mentioned that we never paskin like Rabbi Meir. You know that? The Gemara in Eruvin says, on Daf Yud Gimel, we don't paskin like Rabbi Meir. Ever. Stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir. Ayin the Sefer Alakad Meir Aneni. In the back of the book, there are 5 chapters of Mispachim. One of them is, how can we not pass like Rabbi Meir? Stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir. Stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir has nothing to do with the fact that we never, ever, ever pass like Rabbi Meir. So one little thing, let's digress. This is a very important point. Who wrote the Mishnah? Rabbi Meir, right? No shame. Not even close. You didn't write the Mishnah. Moshe Kibbutz Torah Misinai. There were Mishnayos in the Midbar. There wasn't Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. The Gemara Chagiga says there was Sheish Meya Sidrei Mishnah. It was all recorded. It was all written. Mimnei Yuridas Hadoyros of Yudah Nasi had to consolidate and condense 600 Siddharim into 6 Siddharim. Now, whose text did he use? All Tanoim had a little bit of a different girsa of the original Mishnah. Rabbi Meir had, Rabbi Gamliel had, everyone had original text of the Mishnah. Whose text did Rebbe use when consolidating the Mishnah? He used the text, the language of Rabbi Meir. But when there's a machloikis about something, and Rabbi Meir offers his personal opinion, and someone else offers his personal opinion, we never, ever, ever, ever paskin like Rabbi Meir. except for Hilchos Safros, except when it comes to Nyanei Sefer Torah, because Rabbi Meir was a Sefer. And there's one more exception. And that exception is that even though Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that we are not always the children of Hashem, we would typically pass on like Rabbi Yehuda, by this machlokes we pass on like Rabbi Meir. Why? So the Rashba says in the Simon Chutz Adidav, in Rishon Beis, because Rabbi Meir brings 4 psukim to support him, so therefore that indicates that Allah is like him, or because this is the only time where typically Rabbi Meir is a Tanakama, here Rabbi Meir is quoted second, that indicates he has the last word. There are many different reasons we pass him like Rabbi Meir. One, famously the Satmar Rebbe writes that what's the reason we don't pass him like Rabbi Meir typically? Because Lo Yardu Chacham L'Soif Daita. Nobody knows what he's talking about. He's too deep. But that's when it's relevant to our practice down here in this world. But what if it's relevant to how Hashem treats us? Then bevadai yorda hakadosh baruch hu l'soif daito shur Meir. So legami the fact that we're Baal HaMakom, we pass like Rabbi Meir, and the Salman Rebbe says this is pshat. Hayom haras oilam, hayom yami b'mishpat, im kebanim, im kavadim. Im kebanim, if we're like children, have rachmanas on us. Im kavadim, inenu l'chatzliyos. And if we're like Avadim, so now our eyes hinge on you. What's that supposed to mean? And if we're not like Avadim, we're not hinged on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Satmar Rebbe says, Goinas. He says, if we act like children, then even Rabbi Yehuda would be masculine, like children. So you have to have rachmanas. In Avadim. And if we don't act like children, so Rabbi Yehuda would say we're not. We're dependent on you. That for this machlokes you need to be yored the Saidaito Shur Meir. Inenu l'cha teluyos, we're hinged on you, that you should see and understand Rabbi Meir Shita, and then you'll treat us like banim and okay. But here's another reason why we pass on like Rabbi Meir over Rabbi Meir. And that is there's one other very important Tana who agrees to Rabbi Meir. And that's Rabbi Kiva. Because Gemara in the Masechta Bava Basra has the following machlokes. We'll try to wrap it up because I know we started late. The Gemara has machlokes. Are you allowed to get tzedakah? So Tornis Rufus, I know a lot of people who they mamish hold like Tornis Rufus. They allowed to get tzedakah. You know, Tornis Rufus said that does God love the poor? So Rabbi Kiva says, yeah, he loves the poor. So Tornis Rufus says, so why doesn't he give them a job? He obviously doesn't love them. Says Tornis Rufus, I hold if you give tzedakah, you're going straight to Gehenna. Because God said the person should be poor, and you're contravening God's decree. I mean, imagine if the king said about one of his servants that he should be poor, and someone sneaks in and feeds him, he's a martyr b'malchus. So Rabbi Kiva says, bad mashal. If the king says his son should starve in jail, and someone comes and feeds the kid, the king will reward the benefactor. So Rabbi Kiva clearly holds that the reason why you're allowed to give tzedakah is because benkach ubenkach yekram banim. In fact, the Parsha's Drachim writes that lefi shitas Rabbi Yehuda, you're not allowed to give tzedakah b'zman hazeh. The only reason you're allowed to give tzedakah b'zman hazeh is because we hold that benkach ubenkach yekram banim. You know why we pass it like Rabbi Meir? Says Rabbi Yosef, because Rabbi Akiva paskins like Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Akiva holds that you're allowed to give tzedakah b'zman hazeh. And even though we never paskin like Rabbi Meir, there's a klal in Shas, halacha Rabbi Akiva mechaveirav. So Rabbi Akiva sides with Rabbi Meir. By the way, that's the reason why we give tzedakah le'iloi nishmas Rabbi Meir balanes, because only according to Rabbi Meir is tzedakah a zechus. But according to other Tanoim, not only you're not doing a mitzvah, you're doing an aveira. That's the connection between Rabbi Meir and tzedakah. And therefore, if there would ever be a Yom Tov that we should be madgish and emphasize giving tzedakah to demonstrate that we are the beloved children of Hashem, it's got to be Chanukah. You know what? Chanukah is probably the very essence of tzedakah. And in fact, Chanukah's Habayis writes, the gematria of Chanukah, the Atash, is 269. Soy tzedakah, because Chanukah in fact is the very essence of tzedakah, because the light of Chanukah and the Shiur of Chanukah is the light that no matter what, we are always the beloved children of Hashem. Hashem restores Chodesh, Hashem restores Milah, Hashem restores Shabbos, V'yachakein bo banecha. There's no wonder then that Rabbi Meir would always invoke the light of Chanukah Elakah, the Meir Einenu B'nei Chanukah Hu Yair Lanu. Now, I'm not done. It's not my fault they started 15 minutes late. So, one last thing. Most Jews commemorate the Yahrtzeit of Rabbi Meir on Pesach Sheni. You go to any calendar, it says Rabbi Meir's Yahrtzeit is Pesach Sheni. But if you look at the Seichema says there's actually no basis for that. It's for financial reasons. They made it up. Seichema writes, everyone was going to the Rashbi on Lag BaOmer. And everyone was pouring money into the Meiron's economy. So Tiberia said, what's with us? Because that was the best economic time for the north of Israel. People come to Eretz Yisrael, Pesach, and they stay till Shavuos. So they have nothing to do for 49 days. So they go Lag BaOmer Meiron. And Tiberia said, okay, you're pumping in money into the economy of Meiron. What about Tiberia? So they said, what are you going to do? What are we going to do in Tiberia? Come to Rabbi Meir. Why should we come to Rabbi Meir? I don't know. Come to Rabbi Meir. So they said, well, what are you going to make up? It's his Yahrtzeit? Then you're going to lose out a day of Tachman. So they said, fine, this is what we'll do. We'll say his Yahrtzeit is Pesach Sheni. They don't say Tachman anyway, Pesach Sheni. And the Seichema says, they said, come up to Rabbi Meir, you're on your way to Meiron anyway. Come to Rabbi Meir on Pesach Sheni, it's right nearby, and you're not going to affect Tachman because we don't say Tachman. Says the Seichema, that is why people began to consider Rabbi Meir's Yahrtzeit on Pesach Sheni. But there's no basis for it, says the Seichema. And in fact, there is no actual source for Rabbi Meir's Yahrtzeit as Pesach Sheni. So the question is, when is Rabbi Meir's Yahrtzeit? Many suggest that if you speak to the old-time residents of Tiberia, they will say that the Yahrtzeit of Rabbi Meir Balanes is none other than Rosh Chodesh Teves. So why didn't anybody say anything? Nobody wanted to start up with the economy of Tiberia and the people visiting Lag BaOmer, and they were going anyway Pesach Sheni, so they didn't want to make a big deal. So they just said, light a ner le'ilui nishmas Rabbi Meir Balanes. Why do you think you're lighting a ner? Why else do you light a ner for somebody? Rosh Chodesh Teves is the Yahrtzeit of Rabbi Meir Balanes. Now, in Yonenu, it comes out so magnificent that Rabbi Meir's Yahrtzeit is Rosh Chodesh Teves Chanukah. Why? Because there's an amazing medrash. The medrash says, it's the very end, and I'm going to close with this time for real. The medrash says on Koheles, number 22, Divrei Chachomim Kador Banois, V'chamas Rois Netuim, Balei Asufais Nidnu Meirayah. Says the medrash, when does a person really inculcate and integrate the teachings of his Rebbe? In other words, when in a person's life do they say, you know what? All these limudim that my rabbi taught me, I finally get it. When does it sink in? When the Rebbe's not here anymore. Because so long as the Rebbe's alive, you could say, I'll ask him later, I'll hear the video, I'll hear the recording, the whatever, the MP3, the podcast. The Rebbe's not here, then you realize, okay, I gotta integrate it myself now. So Tzaddik HaKohen says, from here we see a very important lesson. That on the day that a tzaddik passes away, that's the day that his teaching is planted into the hearts of Klal Yisrael. What was the great teaching of Rabbi Meir? The one teaching that we actually paskin like. Beikach lebeikach nekram. When in history did that teaching, when was it demonstrated to Klal Yisrael? On Chanukah. And when is that teaching nailed down into the hearts of Klal Yisrael? On Chanukah, which is possibly the Yahrtzeit of Rabbi Meir Balanes. So this Rosh Chodesh Teves, if you happen to have a ner, think about Rabbi Meir. In fact, Rabbi Chaim Falaji writes, a Jew can never be Mesiach Das from the Tana of Rabbi Meir Balanes. It's amazing lashon. As far as I know, you're allowed to be Misech Das from Avram Avinu. You can be Misech Das from any from. There's no chiyuv to think about anybody, but there is an obligation to always think about Rabbi Meir, and that's because we're obligated never to forget the eternal and deep love HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for Klal Yisrael as a whole, and for every single individual. The Rebbe Shalom loves us, v'ahavas oilam, v'ahav rabba, and we should be zoiche in turn to be Mekayim, Yahrtzeit, Hashem and Jews. I want to wish everyone a Feilich and Chanukah. Thank you so much.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.